Well, the West is ready to cut off Ukraine from its bomb allowance. Can you believe this? After almost 2 years of funding a war and allowing so many Ukrainians to die for a war that's based on a lie, now the West may be actually willing to close the wallet and admit defeat. Now, there's a laundry list of indications about this today and over the weekend from the United States, the European Union, and NATO. So first, the biggest one. Here, we have headlines now reporting that the White House has warned that the U.S. will run out of funds for Ukraine by the end of the year. This is a shocking admission that the United States doesn't have it to give, but continues to grandstand about it. This came from a letter published by the White House Budget Director, Shalanda Young. Here is what her letter says. She says, I want to be clear, without congressional action, by the end of the year, we will run out of resources to procure more weapons and equipment for Ukraine and to provide equipment from U.S. military stocks. There is no magical pot of funding available to meet this moment. We are out of money and nearly out of time. But she still goes on to ask for more money, even though, look at this here, she's saying there's no magical pot. It's not there. It's blood from a stone, but we want it. So here she goes on to say that we need Congress to do something about it, make that magical pot. In other words, there's no magical pot, she says, but get the money.
You know what I love, too, about this White House statement is that it has at the top a Christmas ornament. Like, it's like basically saying here at the White House, we're celebrating Christmas and it's warm and nice and cozy. And, you know, we're sending money to Israel and around the rest of the world. But for you guys over in Ukraine that are out in the snow right now, and we've killed over 500,000 of your people, Christmas is not coming to Ukraine.
Right. Well, they're asking. So here's what she says, that she must stress that helping Ukraine defend itself and secure its future as a sovereign, democratic, independent, and prosperous nation advances our national security interests. Now, I could poke a million holes in that sentence alone. First of all, Ukraine is not sovereign, nor independent, nor democratic. They do what we tell them to do, and the rest of the Western countries, such as the EU and NATO countries. They are absolutely not democratic. They can't even vote out Zelenskyy if they wanted to, even though elections were supposed to be happening now. So that in and of itself is a lie. I couldn't leave that alone, but let's go back to her statement. She's saying that if we help, it prevents larger conflict in the region that could involve NATO and put U.S. forces in harm's way and deter future aggression, making us all safer. As President Biden has said, when dictators do not pay a price for their aggression, they will cause more chaos and death and destruction. So basically, Putin's a dictator and he needs a spanking so that he remembers what it feels like and he won't do it again. They just keep going, she says, even though Russia has said that they have no plan to take over any other region other than the Donbass area that voted to join Russia and asked to become a part of Russia. Okay, still lies. So, you know, it's in Congress's hands. She says, we're out of money to support Ukraine in this fight. This isn't a next year problem.
Something's not adding up here, though.
Okay.
Because on the same day that this statement comes out, the White House admits through the Pentagon that they are now going to ramp up military artillery and weapons productions by 4 times. 4 times.
Yes.
And in fact, someone in our chat just said that in Scranton, Pennsylvania, the 155 millimeter shell artillery shell factory is now running at full production, Philly Vortex says. So it's up and running fully, and we're going to be pumping out 4 times the amount of artillery and weapons. We don't have anything for them, though. Something's fishy. Okay.
I mean, I'm not, this is what Al Gore has called fuzzy math, because I'm not in the coffers here. I mean, I know what a $1 trillion deficit looks like. I know that the United States doesn't have it. I don't know what she means when she talks about there's no magical pot of money, because we use a lot of magical money. Right. So before we go on, though, I think it's important to look at the fault lines in funding for Ukraine, but let's remind ourselves of the map once again. So this was the map on June 1st, 2023, when the counteroffensive began. This is the map just today that I screenshot from RIA sources, which seem to match up with most Western sources as well. I want to remind you what you're looking at. The red areas there are areas that asked Russia to come in and defend them from an impending attack that Zelenskyy ordered on Crimea and other areas in the Donbass in 2022. Recall that those are areas that Ukraine has been spending $1 million per day since 2014 to attack civilian infrastructure. And those people have been begging Russia to please annex them the same way they did Crimea, which is the little island at the bottom. Russia did so, came in 2022, offered them the option to vote to become a part of Russia in September 2022, and they voted overwhelmingly to join Russia because they were tired of being a victim of genocide by Ukraine. Now, if we could just leave that map up a little bit longer, because the counteroffensive has taken back no land at all. Those are people now who want to be Russia. Why are people dying? Because Ukraine continues to send untrained soldiers up against that line to take it back so that they can continue to terrorize those people and reclaim that land as part of Ukraine. So that is specifically what the United States is asking them to do and supporting them to do. Now, given that the U.S. has funneled billions into this effort, and Ukraine has lost, between the official numbers are between 70 and 200,000. I've seen upwards of 300,000 in this effort. Why then do we want to send more money to get more people killed in order to take back land that doesn't want to be Ukraine? That's a pertinent question. Now, that's the question that the EU is debating, too. Take a look at this headline. Next week, EU leaders will have a summit in Brussels, and they simply cannot agree to an aid package for Ukraine. You notice who they're putting here front and center as like the fly in the ointment.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Viktor
Orban. He's like, I can't shake your hand.
Cannot do it.
Like, what's that on your hand?
Right. That it's, I mean, this is what they're implying, is that it's really just this guy who is, but everyone else would. Right. Now, this happened a few months ago. The EU wanted to offer money to Ukraine, but member states just wouldn't vote for it. So instead, it was kind of, they said, oh, okay, we can't give you money. We will shoot ourselves in the foot in loyalty. That's what they did because they launched another round of sanctions on Russia. So they hurt themselves and the European economy that continues to suffer. So they sure showed them. And finally, NATO head Jens Stoltenberg said that they should be prepared for bad news over the weekend about the war in Ukraine. This is an interview that was done in English, but a German news program conducted it, so they dubbed it in German. So I'm choosing not to show you the audio, but here is the video of it, and I will tell you what he says. What he said was, war develops in phases, and we have to support Ukraine in both good and bad times. We should also be prepared for bad news. So is that a harbinger of what's to come? Meaning we do not expect Ukraine to ever... no, not that one, not yet. That we do not expect Ukraine to ever actually take that territory back. The bad news is here.
Yeah, what bad news is he talking about?
In my opinion, if you were to ask, what's the worst case scenario for Ukraine? We're here. This is it.
The worst case scenario was when you didn't adhere to the Minsk Accords, and you decided to jettison the Minsk Accords. That's the worst case scenario. That was the destructive moment of your choosing.
Yeah.
When you admitted, well, as Zelenskyy admitted, they never intended to go forward with the Minsk Accords, and that it was a joke. And of course, Angela Merkel admitted it was only meant to buy Ukraine time to become stronger.
Right.
But worst case scenario, yeah, 500,000 people dead, an entire generation wiped away.
I think what you just answered is what's the pivot point that would lead to the worst case scenario. But the worst case scenario is right now. Every day it gets worse, but this is the worst it could have been. This is reality. We have created the worst. I cannot imagine that it gets worse. It does every day. Here's what, again, NATO head Jens Stoltenberg said. He acknowledged Ukraine has been unable to move the front line, but claimed, let's look at the map again. The front line, right, did not move between June and December. But he says that Ukraine forces were still achieving big victories. What big victories is he talking about, I wonder? Maybe for Zelenskyy, personal big victories?
Maybe they just mean financial victories.
Okay, because, your average age of a soldier being 43, because most young men have died inside Ukraine defending an area so that they could take it back and torture civilians, I don't find that to be a very interesting victory.
Maybe we. I was gonna say maybe we don't see it on the map, but maybe there's some of those places in there where like they made it from one side of the street to the other, and so it doesn't look like much. But it was a pretty big victory that they're now on the north and the south side of that one. I don't know.
They crossed the road.
Much has changed there.
They crossed the road and they managed to take cover in an old barn that's now been destroyed, and they now have claimed that territory back again.
Okay.
No, in fact, it can get a lot worse. It could get a lot worse for Ukraine. Because if you keep that map up again, imagine that's all Russia has right now. The ethnic area, the ethnic Russian territory that's been bombed since 2014. Imagine if they don't unconditionally surrender, how much further Russia will push and how much more land Russia will take. And pretty soon, this country is going to fully collapse, have no water route at all, have no access to ocean waters. And what happens on the western side when Poland decides to take what they want? Ukraine will cease to exist as a country. So the longer this goes on, the worse it gets.
Okay, but let's keep the map up as we talk about this, because the dark gray area between the eggshell color that is currently Ukraine and the red, which is annexed Russia, the dark gray shading in between there is still part of Donbas region that wants to join Russia, but Russia has not been able to actually take control over. So those places are still controlled by Ukraine and are still getting terrorized by much of the SBU army. So that is still up for grabs. So Russia still intends to move west to that line. Now, what the West tells us is that Russia wants to go all the way to the Atlantic across Europe.
Right,
even though they, again,
there's no evidence whatsoever.
There's no evidence of that. Putin did not want to do that. It was his parliament that voted to even launch the special forces operation. So, but again, that's what Russia has said is the goal, is just to take back or to take that dark gray shaded contested area. But the red area will never fall back into Western hands again. What happens to the eggshell color we're talking about, or egg crew, or whatever, the lighter cream there is now what is up for grabs. Now, we've seen former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton saying, well, we'd like to place American oligarchs in there, right? Well, she didn't call them oligarchs, but that's what they are. Saying, well, America's willing to go in and rebuild that because it was Russian oligarchs before. So America's private interest is very willing to take over what implodes inside of Ukraine. But in terms of worst case scenarios, I can't imagine for today it could get any worse. Let's look at what Zelenskyy said on his public relations tour that he's on. He spoke to the Associated Press.
Sorry. Anytime we play Associated Press, they take our show down. So
okay,
can we not do that?
You were on camera for that, telling me what to do.
No, because I see it over here in the preview. I'm like, no.
Most of the time, Clayton does that off camera, and I'm so glad he's been busted.
No, I'm fine to do it. No.
Okay.
Well, I can't
We're
talk.
not going to show you this.
Lozenge in my mouth.
Maybe, Philip, can you just put it on the screen paused so you can see Zelenskyy, and I will tell you what he says?
Yeah, give me a second.
Okay.
Let me try that.
Okay, if we put it up and okay. So anyway, I will tell you what he says here. He says, winter as a whole is a new phase of war. I'd say that a winter war takes place not only on the front lines, but inside cities too. He says, we wanted faster results from the counteroffensive. And from that perspective, unfortunately, we did not achieve the desired results. And that is a fact. Now, I'm very worried about this idea that winter means that you need to bring war into cities. He says that winter takes war not on the front lines, but inside cities too. Why then, why does cold weather mean you have to fight inside of cities? Anyone who has military experience want to ring in on that? Could that be my worry?
Wait, what was the question?
Okay, here's the quote. I'd say that a winter war takes place not only on the front lines, but inside cities too. Now, given that Ukraine, for anyone who is watching the truth, has a reputation for attacking civilian infrastructures, are they warning us that they're going to do that more now that winter's here, for whatever reason, cold weather means we need to attack inside cities and we can't attack. Now, I get the idea that, frozen ground and muddy ground and you can't move your equipment around, right? That's true during war. But why then are we going to go and fight our wars inside of cities? Is this an admission that Ukraine has already been attacking civilian infrastructures? So maybe we want to get clear on that before we go broke helping this non-democratic nation. Let us know what you think in the chat below.
All right.
Do you have any
I don't know. I mean,
why winter would mean you need to fight inside of cities?
I mean, other than, there's no electricity anyway, so it's not like and there's no heating, so you're not really, unless you just have some protection of the empty walls that you're, to set up camp. And obviously also, if you learn from the Battle of the Bulge, you can't light fires. The moment you light a fire and you see smoke in the winter, boom, like you're done. You can't light a fire. You can't do anything like that. So the Allies learned that. You absolutely, talk about trench foot and horrible situation in the Battle of the Bulge. That's a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, David?
The buildings block the wind. That's what I was going to say. It keeps keeps them warmer.
Okay.
Obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
But who knows what their intentions are with taking over civilian infrastructure? Who knows? Good luck. I don't know what they've got left at this point. What kind of weapons are being sent there? We don't know, but we do know from the IDF today. Former Israeli Defense Forces Major General came out and admitted every bullet we fire, every weapon we have, everything we have in Israel all comes from the United States. Every bomb we drop, everything. And we learned that any of the stockpiles that were being held back for us, as former UN Weapons Inspector Scott Ritter just admitted, a lot of that, what was supposed to be going to Ukraine, was not sent there. And we told them we didn't have anything else. And then suddenly we sent a huge tranche of weapons to Israel. And, you thought you told us that you didn't have any anymore. So I guess they're gone now. But no, they're all sent to Israel. So that's what happened. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.